For a country as vast and diverse as Nigeria, effective governance cannot begin and end at the federal level. At the core of our democratic structure lies the local government system, designed to bring leadership closer to the people and development directly to their doorsteps. But today, that system lies weakened, largely ignored, and in many cases hijacked by state-level politics. The local government is meant to be the most accessible arm of government, handling everything from primary health care to basic education, rural roads, sanitation, and local markets. It's the tier that directly affects your everyday life, yet for millions of Nigerians, the local government is either invisible or dysfunctional. But beyond the failures, we must ask ourselves deeper questions. Why is there such little transparency at the grassroots level? Why do we, our many citizens like us, not even know the names or the responsibilities of their local government chairman or councillors? And critically, why are young people, who make up over 60% of our population, no more involved in reshaping and reviving this crucial tier of government in a time where youth activism is shaping conversations around democracy, justice, and accountability? The absence of young voices in local governance is alarming. If we want real sustainable development, if we want to see working schools, functioning clinics, clean water, less of floods in that sense, and safer communities, then we must ask, what role should the next generation play in demanding, influencing, and even occupying local government offices? Well, welcome to another episode of Politics Uncensored, where we go beyond the headlines and speak truth to power. We speak the truth many are too tired or too afraid to say out loud. Nigeria is in dire need of a solution. Our goal will always be to provide a platform for open and honest discussions where experts and everyday citizens can share their perspectives and insights. It's always going to be your favorite show, of course, and we have an expert guest who will be joining us soon. I'm your host, Okikiola Taiwo Jalukmon, the polyhumanitarian. Of course, I'm here to ensure politics is acceptable for all. Every episode is all about you, so be a part of our conversations every Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and add your voices to this discussion. You should also head on to our YouTube channel at Official Upgrade TV. Hit that subscribe button, like, and share this link. You can also invite your friends to join the show right now. We'll go on a break right now, and then we'll return with our guests and take our top stories in the political space making headlines. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Watching Politics Uncensored, and today we're talking about the local government. What are their roles, their duties, and accountability? Today on Politics Uncensored, we unpack the real purpose of local government, its neglected duties, and most importantly, why accountability at that level is non-negotiable if Nigeria is ever to work for its people. We sit here with Ayodele Adio, a seasoned policy voice and the candidate of the Youth Party. He's running for the position of the chairman, Etiosa local government, is also here to interrogate the true purpose of the local government system, expose the factors undermining it, and examine how young Nigerians can reclaim and reform it. Because if we're serious about fixing Nigeria, then we must begin where the people live, not just where the power is concentrated. Welcome, Ayodele. How are you doing?
Welcome. Thank you for having me.
How did it go getting here?
Wasn't that difficult. I think the floods have subsided in certain areas, but, I mean, still a bit tricky.
I intentionally asked because you're running in an area where it's called flood o'clock. And every time the rain just starts to pour, we know that there's traffic, there's congestion, there's a lot of things that's happening. So how do you feel, going every day, seeing these problems and, still wondering why the local government is not doing anything about it?
Well, it's quite unfortunate, and that's basically the reason why I'm running, because you've had an absentee local government for the last 2 decades in Etiosa. A local government that is completely removed from the reality of the average resident or average business owner. A local government that is so incompetent, it can't even collect waste effectively. And it couldn't be bothered with the development or well-being of the people within its vicinity or locality. And that's quite alarming if you think about it for a local government with such immense potential, whether economic or human capital. It's saddening that this local government has been in the hands of politicians who are more interested in advancing the vanities of themselves and their cronies rather than the socio-economic development and well-being of our people. And that really, really saddens me.
It's quite sad that I don't know if the chairman, maybe if he's listening to you right now, would be shaken by what you have said, or then, as you've mentioned, how unbothered he has been about his constituents. I hope that for some reasons your own manifesto or purpose towards Etiosa can come to life, looking that I've seen your campaign and some of the things that you have tried to highlight, majorly the problems in Ethiopia. And I like the fact that you have not just spoken about the problems, you have also highlighted some of the solutions that you want to bring to that space. And it's easy to say, it's easy to see that these are problems. And I don't know why, this is talking from a personal level, I don't know why, even though we see these solutions over and over again, we still see people not trying to implement it. I've said that implementation is a Nigerian problem. I don't know why we always have money on ground, things to do, policy on par, but when it comes to implementing this, it becomes a problem. And this morning we spoke about the flood issues and how 20 states have been affected by flood. And I personally commute from Lekki to the mainland every day, and I see that when it begins to rain, my whole world is capsizing. What was one of the things that you said you would change if you got into power?
Well, I mean, if you're speaking specifically to the flooding, there are a few things that I think that the local government has the capacity to do and to handle effectively. I must quickly state that there are a few structural and systemic issues that lead to this perennial flooding that we're experiencing that local governments do not have the capacity to deal with. You know, I'm talking about, you know, the kinds of investments that state governments have to make in things like dikes, huge pumps that pumps water out from flooded areas back into the lagoon. I'm talking about a strict adherence to wetland policies in Lagos State, putting in place very strict measures against indiscriminate dredging without environmental impact assessments. I'm also talking about investing in parks, you know, and better environmental codes, especially building codes, that makes our environment a lot more resilient. Now, these things have to be handled at a state level, and local governments do not have, you know, the budgets to be able to do that. Neither do they have the capacity to handle those things at scale. But I can tell you what a local government can do, and that's what we're also going to do when we get into office. The first is to ensure that the drains are constantly, consistently cleared. And that's a problem that we face in this local government. You see drainage systems that are overridden with weeds, blocked by waste because we don't have an effective waste management system, so water is not flowing, and when it rains, everything pours on the main roads and blocks everywhere, and everywhere becomes flooded. So we're going to put up an effective waste management system that makes it easy for us to collect, sort, and recycle waste in a manner that is not burdensome on household or businesses. And obviously, like I said, we're going to set up an environmental corps, many of which will be responsible for the collecting and disposing of this waste, but even more importantly, for ensuring and maintaining sanitation, which includes the clearing of these drains that I'm talking about. But I think also even more important is the fact that we are going to set up an emergency response system in the local government such that we can respond, you know, to flooding situations where people are stranded. Now, that is non-existent even at the state level, where you see that when these floodings happen, you have people tweeting rather than helping. And what, as a local government, what we're going to do is to put together an emergency response. You see kids who are unable to go to school because their streets are flooded. Yeah. What kind of support can we provide for these kinds of children? You see businesses that have their entire goods floating on water when it rains. What kind of support and relief can we provide for these businesses? You have cars that are stuck in the middle of the mud and they are stuck and they can't move. What kind of services can we provide to help them out of that situation? And that's the kind of emergency response that we're going to put together in this local government and would ensure that that emergency response is one that is people-centric and that by a click of a button or by phone call, you have people that are responsive and responsible enough to solve the problems of our people when it rains.
So it doesn't, I don't want it to seem like you're talking overboard in this sense to the average Nigerian. So I would like us to see a video of where you were actually on the forefront of this flood issue, showing what the problem is and what the kind of solutions that we should be asking of. And you've mentioned quite a number of them right now. So I'm waiting for the video.
We're somewhere in Lekki trying to get to a meeting with my agents and canvassers, and here we are stuck in the middle of water. This is a problem. This is an environmental problem that we have to deal with all of Lekki. And here's how we're going to fix this. I'm going to set up an environmental corps that will ensure that all our drains are fixed. The water is free and it's flowing and they are never blocked. And that will be their job 24/7. Never would we have streets that are blocked like this. This is one of the reasons why I'm running for office. When flooding like this happens in inner streets, is to provide emergency services for people who are stranded. There is not a single emergency service anywhere in Lagos, and we're going to be the first to do that in Echiosa, to support people when flooding like this happens.
Well, I had to show that video because it's so sad to see that the so-called Lekki, in that sense, the whole ill and mighty Lekki is experiencing such. And even from the video, you can hear the sound of the water. So
yes.
You know it's really heavy. It's not just the fact that people are struggling to drive past that flood. It's a movement have also been restricted, just like I've mentioned. But usually we discuss something about the political brief that's always making the headlines on the news, and we have one about the local government polls happening this Saturday, I guess.
Yeah.
So the police has announced restriction of movement in Lagos, and saying that the police authorities in Lagos State has announced restrictions of movement in the southwest state on Saturday, July 12, for the local government elections. The Lagos State Police Command said on Wednesday that the movement restriction will begin in the early hours of the day. In a statement, the command said the total restriction of vehicular movement throughout Lagos State will be from 3 a.m. on Saturday, 12 July 2025 till 3 p.m. of the same Saturday, 12th July 2025. However, some set of persons were excluded from the restriction on movement. And what caught me in this story is them saying more to follow. So who are this set of persons that are going to be excluded from the restriction of movement on Saturday? Are you aware? Would you like to tell us?
No, I'm not sure who the extras will be, but what I find worrying in that statement is that the only journalists that they are going to allow, or as is claimed in that report, are journalists that are going to be accredited by the Lagos State Electoral Commission. I think that's the fundamental abuse of the rights of journalists and media organizations. The media, the press, doesn't need to be accredited by any electoral commission, except they are going on special projects on behalf of that commission. I think journalists who work with reputable media organizations have the right, to cover these elections without having to be accredited by the Lagos State Electoral Commission. I think it's just it's a bit of a fallacy to me that media organizations have to go to LISEC to get accreditation. So what it means is if they say I'm not going to accredit someone from your TV station, it means you don't get to cover. If they say they don't want Punch to cover, it means, so it makes no sense.
And that challenges the freedom of speech.
Exactly, so that makes no sense, absolutely. And they don't have the right to be able to restrict coverage of the elections. As long as they are, journalists from reputable media organizations, you don't need to seek some sort of accreditation from LISEC before you can cover the elections. I find that as an anomaly.
There is a lot of things that we should be asking to be corrected in a case where we can't cover something that should be every right of every Nigerian to do so. We also had the AAC chairman of Lagos, the African Action Congress, say that
Yes.
the Lagos administration is full of thuggery and there's nothing like the Lagos State administration. So what would your own view be on that?
Well, I'm not sure what he was speaking to specifically on that instance, but I would imagine, because I've been on several forums with him and experienced the same challenges that their political party have also experienced. And if I understand him correctly, I would argue that he was talking about the peace accord that LISEC wanted political parties to sign. And his argument, and the argument of the AAC, is that of what use are you bringing political parties who have historically conducted themselves peacefully to sign a peace accord when you know the people who instigate this violence on election day? So it's a mockery of the entire process that you're bringing political parties who have been the victims of state-sponsored violence in certain instances to sign peace accords when the real people who unleash this violence on innocent residents and voters, are out there. They are, in several unions. They are thugs on the streets. Some of them are attached to palaces across the state. Some of them are attached to chiefs and politicians or politically exposed persons. So it makes a mockery of the entire process that you want to put together a peace party without holding those who deploy violence to account. And I'm sure that is what exactly the AAC chairman was speaking to. And I also find that amusing, that you're not holding those who unleash violence on citizens to account. You want to be signing some sort of ceremonial peace accord for the cameras and for the media,
for the
whereas
media to take up.
you have no control or will not have any control of the likelihood of what is going to happen on Saturday, as we have seen historically.
Well, Nigeria's story is quite a sad one, but we need to keep talking, and that's why we're starting from the local government. A lot of people have mentioned how they don't even know that an election is happening on Saturday. I remember someone invited me to a picnic and was telling me, oh, the picnic is this Saturday. I'm like, what Saturday? It's July 12th. I was like, that's an election. I was like, oh, there's an election happening. So it was like nobody knows. Nobody cares to know in that sense. But going into more of the roles and responsibilities of the local government, I think we'll dive into how, or we pick some of the blames that the young people have, and also why we still have some of these issues existing even in 2025 after NSAS, after a lot of protests that have happened. But that's all that we can take on the political brief for this morning. So we'll go on a break and then return with our hot topic for today, and please stay with us.
Tell us you're a Nigerian without saying a word. Energy security is one of the most pressing issues for many developing countries like Nigeria. And if there's going to be any meaningful progress, addressing our energy issues is non-negotiable.
I need to see light for my house. Make them do something.
Band A is expensive. I literally have to turn off all my appliances just to reduce costs.
We need light.
Introducing the Energy Outlook, your go-to show for everything energy. Every week, we'll bring you the latest insights, innovation, and in-depth analysis of Nigeria's energy sector. From policy discussions to regulatory insights, we'll analyze the key decisions influencing growth and sustainability in the energy sector. We'll bring you the human stories behind the headlines, giving you a personal perspective on the broader energy challenges. Join me every Friday at 6 p.m. for the Energy Outlook, your guide to the future of energy, where energy means business.
Well, thank you for staying tuned. If you just tuned in, we are talking about the local government roles, duties, and accountability. And we have to first start off with understanding the structure. What exactly are the constitutional roles and duties of the local government in Nigeria? Of course, we have Ayodele Adio here, who has so graciously joined us to discuss this topic. So, over to you. The question, what role do you think that the local government, or what are the roles of the local government system in Nigeria?
Well, I think the Constitution clearly, have stated the roles of local government, which stems from providing primary healthcare, primary education, environmental sanitation, naming of streets, birth, what's it called again? Registration of births in local government, and of course management of the morgues that are located within those local governments. Very importantly also, the Constitution also clearly states that local governments are responsible for issuing and the collection of tenement rates. Unfortunately, that particular function has been taken over by most state governments, who collects these property taxes on buildings rather than local government. So these are primarily the functions of local governments. Of course, they also embark on the construction of inner city roads, providing basic social amenities within the local government. So to a very large extent, the local government have key responsibilities in shaping education, in shaping primary health care, in providing, jobs within the local community, and of course, delivering on a friendly, resilient environment for the people within those local governments.
It's almost like you're telling me something that happens in the books, because I have not been seeing that. It's when somebody's telling you that the local government is supposed to, and then you look at your local government like, when did I see that? Because I only see these things happening when it's close to elections, and I'm thinking that, did somebody force them? Did someone say, if you don't fix this pothole, if someone tells you, why is it that that's the only time these things, happen? And when you also spoke about the tenancy task going straight to the state government, I started to wonder, I didn't know that was supposed to go to the local government. And I think that's one of the reasons that the local government has been fighting for autonomy. But if looking at what's happened in the past decade and looking at what's going to happen over time from the Bola Ahmed administration stating that the local government will now have an autonomy or their own autonomy, so that these budgeting that goes to them can be effectively used for their constituency. But how autonomous are the local governments in reality, especially under the state governments?
So autonomy is not given. Autonomy is earned. And the problem with these autonomy that, in quote, has been delivered and handed over by the Supreme Court, and obviously by virtue of the Constitution, because in the very instance, I didn't even see the reason for the litigation, because our Constitution is clear and defines the role and functions of the local government. But thankfully, the Supreme Court has provided the much-needed clarity, and to a very large extent will separate the monies that are accrued to local governments, and no need to go through the state's joint account, as was the case. But getting that autonomy will require leadership at the local government level. And as long as we have men that have been imposed on the community, people that have been handpicked, who never really campaigned or had vision or had clarity of what they wanted to do in that local government, you're going to have, a bunch of individuals who are loyal to the big man that put them into office.
Absolutely.
And will not have the moral fiber to demand the autonomy that their office, inadvertently wields. And that's, for me, the number one problem with this debate about autonomy. I also think that another critical part is that the people who are supposed to be the biggest beneficiary of that autonomous local government would also have to demand that their local governments are independent. And except that happens, the powers that be will continue to get away with blue murder. I'm stunned at the fact that people sort of gloss over the fact that local governments receive as high And I'm telling you, in April, for instance, Etiosa local government got as high as 1.6 billion in April alone from federal allocation. A local government like Alimosho got close to 2.9 billion from federal allocation. So you're looking at the local government or local governments in Lagos control at the very least 1.5 billion to 3 billion every month. So why should citizens or residents or businesses not be concerned about what their local governments spend these monies on? Why do they not want to be concerned about holding their elected chairmen and councillors to account as to how these monies are being disbursed, what projects are being funded, and, you know, to hold them to account as to the best prices that, you know, the monies are being spent for. Absolutely. So citizens will have to wake up and demand that autonomy, because the autonomy is not necessarily for the office. The autonomy is actually for the people, so that they can hold those that they elect into power to account. And we're not going to have autonomous local governments except we have people who demand that their local governments are autonomous. So I'd like to see a situation where you have residents who are demanding, albeit via peaceful protest or, you know, peaceful
tweeting.
Well, even tweeting if you'd like, but some sort of resistance to say that, listen, as long as Etiosa is concerned, we must see our 1.6 billion for this month. We must know that that 1.6 billion is controlled by the gentleman or woman that we've elected into this office. We also want to have town hall meeting with this person to ensure that this person explains to us where these monies have gone over this period of time. And so we can track performance and we can track, you know, growth of our entire community. Except that happens, we're just going to be playing lip service to this autonomy thing, because we expect suddenly that somebody somewhere is going to put this autonomy in our pockets without us making any demands on it. And I think that's the saddest part of our democracy, is that we just sit back and expect things to be handed over to us and not make demands of them, even especially after their judicial decisions that already empower us to have certain things. We just still sit back. You know, for instance, there's a Court of Appeal judgment that says VIOs should not be asking for, what's this thing, this particular thing they asked for, roadworthiness. Thank you. There's a Court of Appeal judgment that has struck it down. It's not being appealed to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court hasn't spoken otherwise. Yet, all of us park our cars on the road and hand over roadworthiness when we are asked. All of us, when we're going to register our vehicles, we also still continue to pay for road. I mean, it's an absurdity. I mean, it's the same thing with this local government autonomy. The Supreme Court has been clear about it. The Constitution is clear. Yet they remove elected local government chairmen, and all of us sit back and allow the governor to get away with it. So this is the problem that we face. This laid-back, laissez-faire attitude that we have towards democracy, that somebody is just going to be so benevolent or so kind to be able to hand us everything that's in the Constitution, I think is a bit naive and juvenile, if you asked me. We have to demand for better, you know, for us to see this progress happen.
I think I like the way you ended that we have to demand better for us to see progress. And resilience is one thing I picked from all that you have said. Most times when we try to demand for something and it's not given, we sort of just see that, okay, that's how Nigeria is. I know quite a number of people who have been, you know, telling that come out to vote on Saturday, and they're telling me, are they not going to rig the election? It's ballot box number. I'm like, how long would you sit back and even allow yourself to be used in this sense? The fact that you don't go out to vote is double win for whoever it is that is going to mar that election. So it's your fault, it's our fault, it's everyone's fault if you don't go out to vote. And I even told somebody that if God was going to let you into heaven because of one deed, it's going to be that you actually went out to vote for the right candidate, or the candidate that you feel should work for your constituency. So it's quite sad that I see, you know, young people, even older people who are not concerned about what the outcome of the election is going to be anymore. But let's look at the flip side of it. the young people who are actually ready to take that change, the young people who are out there, just like someone like you who is out there trying to change your own constituency, your own community. What innovations do you think that young people, if they were in local government governance, what kind of innovations or reforms do you think that they would bring, or what would change naturally if we start to see young people who are competent, who are not money driven, who are not fed by the godfathers in that sense? What change do you think you see there?
I think that we underestimate how important accountability and transparency is. And when we talk about what people would do differently in office, you don't need highfalutin ideas or technological revolution to drive meaningful impact at the local government level. I can tell you that for free. As basic as being accountable and transparent is enough to be revolutionary in any local government. As easy as saying that I got 1.6 billion this month. This is where this 1.6 billion is going to go. You can track this expenditure with a click of a button to this website, and you can see the progress and the performances of these projects over time. That alone drives citizens' engagement, drives citizens' participation, and sort of pool the resources, and I'm talking about the mental resources of people together to support the growth of these local governments. Because at the moment, people have a hands-off approach to local governments. Nobody wants to have any dealings with them because it's mostly corrupt, bogged down with all sorts of inefficiencies. But imagine a local government, and you've been talking about the environment, for instance. There are billions of dollars on ecological funding from development institutions globally that are looking for where these monies are going to go into to support things like this flooding, environmental degradation, and support places that are prone to all of these occurrences. They cannot fund your local government because there is no transparency and accountability. Just by simply opening the books and having a leadership that is transparent and committed to delivering on their promises, that alone will attract meaningful funding from development institutions globally, and even from local partners within your local government who want to support projects that you're even doing locally, because they can trust that local government and they can see where their monies are going to. And I always give the example of a church. Every time the pastor points to you and say, this is the structure, this is the, how do they call it, say, church building project that we want to finance, and they are looking for people that will donate to financing that church project. One of the reasons people rush out to the altar to put monies there is because they trust that that project will be delivered.
Absolutely.
And the pastors have proven over time that they deliver on these projects every time they raise money to deliver these things. And so people are more than willing, irrespective of the abuses that they get, they still get the funding to do the projects that they want to do. And that's what trust and accountability can do, and how transformational it can be at a local government level. So we're not bringing unique innovations into these local governments. We're doing the basics and the primary things to do in a local government: transparency, accountability, and deliver public services to the people, such that every naira will be accounted for and every expenditure will be geared towards the development of the people in that particular local government, and will be accountable to them for those monies that are spent.
I'm looking at you like maybe the corrupt local government chairman or councillor right now, saying, God forbid, I will not open any book. If development will not come, let it not come. As far as my pocket is full and my heart is full, I would not dare open the books. But this is quite a very important conversation, and it sounds quite funny to a lot of us, but the local government is in need of serious, attention, and that is why we are having this conversation. And in just a few days to go, the local government election is going to come again and go, and then we'll have to wait another 4 years to watch or to clamor for another new administration. So let's go on a break right now and then come back, still having the conversation about the local government roles, responsibilities, and accountability. Please stay tuned.
Life is made up of moments, some that fill us with joy, others that test our strength. Welcome to Heartlines. This is our space to explore the highs and lows of human connection, the love, the heartbreak, and resilience that shapes our life. From relationships to friendships, parenting to partnerships, and so much more. Every week, we share stories and conversations that define us, navigating love, separations, the struggles of parenting, dealing with anxiety and managing the pressures and stress of life. Real conversations that bring us closer, helping us heal, grow, and connect. So join me Mondays through Fridays at 10 p.m. for Heartlines, the show where we connect hearts, have real conversations with real people, one story at a time.
Well, welcome back to the show. You are still watching Politics Uncensored, and we are talking about the local government responsibilities, roles, and accountability. But we also have Ayodele Adio here, who has been, demystifying the roles and responsibilities of the local government. And now we are moving into the practical aspect of it. So if we're going to look forward from now on, what practical steps can young people take to gain access, into the political machinery that dominates the local government? Every single time we see, young people try to come out, vote, be out there, but then to go back to square one because they've seen that, just like the electoral violence that happened, you either die at it or you go home with a lot of injuries, or you just sit back and watch things happen. So what practical steps do you think that young people can take to gain access into the political machinery that dominates the local government elections?
They don't need access into a political machinery, first off. I think we must demystify how important or influential these so-called machineries are. The truth of the matter is, I think that a starting point should be that we must organize ourselves and fight collectively towards ensuring reforms, for local government elections. A lot of progress has been made on INEC. If you looked at the 2023 or 2007 elections, for instance, we've come way ahead of what elections used to be like in 2007, such that even as bad as people claim our elections are today, or elections conducted by INEC, you have incumbent governors failing re-elections into the Senate, right? You have people losing their states of dominance and things like that. And that shows you how much credibility has been built into the process over the years. And that's largely because of agitations from civil society organizations, from Nigerians, to ensure that we push towards a more transparent and credible electoral process. I think that fight also has to happen at the local government level. We also need collective action between civil society organizations, NBAs, all relevant institutions to push for local reforms in the electoral process at the local level. The moment we achieve the level of progress that INEC has made at the local level, what will happen is that you will see participation will boost instantaneously. People will have a lot more confidence in the process and they'll be willing to apply themselves more. Because the reason behind many of the apathy that you see is because people no longer believe in the process. And that's why I tell people who care to listen that I'm not running against the APC, I'm running against apathy, because people are just unwilling to come out and vote. And you don't blame them, because over the years, they've seen the brazen manipulation. They've seen, the daylight robbery. And unfortunately, except we deal with those things, we're not going to increase participation at the local level. So the best way for young people to get in and participate is to use their skills. You have many lawyers who can put briefs together to go to court. You have many technologically savvy people who could do a lot of data analysis and things like that. So we can put together our brains, our minds, our networks to push for better electoral reforms at the local level, because once the system becomes a lot more credible, a lot more transparent, we will weed out many of the incompetence in the system, and you'll see a flood of people who become a lot more interested in participating in politics at the local level.
Can we talk about the role godfatherism plays in all of this transparency, accountability, all of these things? It's almost like when you are under a godfather or godmother, now not to be so gender specific in this sense, when you see the Nigerian political meaning of godfatherism, when you see that come into play, how do we handle, those kind of issues, especially for smaller parties or other candidates who are coming from different parties other than the major parties that we know it to be?
Godfathers typically emerge because of a non-participatory citizenship. And I say that because you need monies, for instance, to run campaigns.
Absolutely.
Those monies typically should come from the public, who believe in your ideas, who believe in your vision, who believe in your political party, to donate their widow's mite into your campaign, to run an effective campaign and hopefully win that election. But you have a system here where rather than the electorates donating or contributing towards campaigns that they believe in, the electorate are seeking to take from candidates who are running for office. So it's an inverted system wherein, it's the people that are funding the campaign. And once these monies aren't available, they have to rely on godfathers to get these monies to fund their campaign. And obviously, nobody puts their monies where they don't have interest in. And so if a godfather is going to be putting 200 million naira down for your campaign, best believe that he has certain interests that you must deliver on if you eventually, get into office. And you can't blame that godfather because, he needs reward for the monies that he put in. So it's the same thing. If citizens want their leaders to be accountable to them, they also have to participate in that process by donating their 5,000 naira, their 10,000 naira. That will add up to become hundreds of millions for that candidate, so that the candidate will be answerable to them that funded his campaign, and not to powerful interest or a godfather who just simply threw him a bag from his piles that he's stolen somewhere and simply advanced the interest of that godfather. So I think people must realize that godfathers are created because citizens are unwilling to participate. And so the few that have the monies to use those monies on candidates that are malleable, so that those candidates then advance their own peculiar interest and not the interest of the public. So we can do away with godfathers if we are willing as citizens to lead a people-centric approach by funding projects that we believe in, even starting with journalism. Again, in Nigeria, you don't have people-funded journalism as you have in other parts of the world, where through the subscription of people and donations, journalists are able to do the work that they do. Here, journalists are struggling because people just want to sit down and enjoy free journalism. And they criticize you every now and then and say, you are not doing investigation enough, you are not doing this enough. And just simply do not realize that these things cost money. And none of you are willing to bite the bullet and make contributions to these civil society organizations, to these independent journalists, to these politicians. And that's why, powerful interests have hijacked many of these institutions, whether it's journalism, whether it's NGOs, whether it's politicians, because the people have created that lacuna, due to their attitude of being removed from the entire process. And that's, for me, that's the easiest way to deal with godfatherism.
It almost seems very funny when you say that the people are supposed to, or ideally are supposed to be so enthusiastic about funding a political candidate of their interest? Will they see, doing projects that will better benefit their constituency? But I remember very well that I've run twice, and all I've done in this case is having to explain and explain and explain to people why I'm running. And after all those plenty English and perfect manifesto posters, like, so after all these things that you have said, what is on ground? What is there for boys? What will boys eat? Boys got to chop. It's almost seeming that even when you start to give back to these people or tip them here and there, they now start to say that they're loyal to you. And if you look at it, you have now also become a godfather or godmother in this sense, because you have now paid their life. You have paid for their life, you have paid for their loyalty, and then you start to demand things that are even unrealistic, from them. And it's quite sad that what's supposed to be the other way around is what, candidates are experiencing. I've seen where candidates from the big parties have actually ran, or the prominent parties, if I'll put it in that sense, have ran for elections, and they don't exactly have the effrontery to ask for what's available for boys. But you see people who have come out in small parties, who are trying to bring people together, who are more people-centered in that sense. Because why am I running for a campaign where I'm going to meet people one-on-one to tell them about my manifesto? I can as well tweet it, talk about it on radio, and that's about it, and feel like I don't owe the people anything. But we're seeing cases where people are going out to vote, but the majority of people who are supposed to receive them so lovingly and ask real questions are asking for stipends. So do you blame the local government chairman who tip these people? Let's say that they are being funded by a godfather. They also had to tip people to buy their loyalty, and when they get into that office, they find survival in that sense. Do you blame them, or what approach would you rather have them have? I'm saying this because let's assume a local government chairman is on the seat right now and is thinking about repenting in this sense. What advice would you give that local government chairman on how to handle the next election, or where it is currently?
I think it's a chicken and egg situation. And I have broken our people into three categories. They are the ultra-rich, they are the middle income, and then there's the poor. The poor are desperate to survive, and so they are more malleable to sell their votes and things like that. And you can't blame them for doing what they do, because firstly, they need to survive. But secondly, politicians have failed them all their lives. So why are you going to be different? So let me just get what I put to get from you now, because if you get into the office, you're going to do the same things the other people have done. And so they don't want to waste time listening to your English. You can't blame them for that. I think that the blame has to go to the middle income people, because these are the group of Nigerians that are educated. They have discretionary income. They are slightly insulated from the reality. They have solar panels in their house, they have boreholes and things like that. These are the class or group of Nigerians that should be pushing and demanding for better. They are the ones that should be funding the right candidates. Those are the ones that should be organizing town halls and debates for candidates when they come out to run, to know what your manifesto is, to know what you're offering this local government. They are the ones that are supposed to be pushing for that intellectual base. Unfortunately, the reality is that they are the most removed from the system. At least the ones at the bottom still participate in the process. The only difference is that you have to pay a toll fee, to earn their participation. Exactly. The ones at the top usually fund major political parties. But you see, the middle, who form the vast majority, are completely removed. And except they participate and put their monies where their mouth is, nothing is going to change. Our politics will remain transactional. It will remain, a stomach infrastructure-driven kind of politics. It will hollow out ideas from the public space, because why bother campaigning when I can just get my monies up 2 days to elections? I can share rice. I can get certain people to stand strategically at polling units to share money as you go out to vote. who cares about ideas, right? So I think the turning point will start when the middle class becomes a lot more interested, when they engage the political process more, and when they are willing to use their talents and resources to infiltrate the political space. That's the only time that change is going to happen. But as long as they sit on the sidelines and keep complaining about how bad, politics is, not realizing that it's their lack of participation that is worsening the political space, who are just going to be trapped in this vicious cycle.
Continuously. So you are running for chairman of Etiosa local government. So I'm going to put you on the spot right now so you can talk to your people watching you right now as we wrap up the show. So it could be your manifesto, it could be what you might have said in quite a number of interviews or on the front line of campaigning. Towards Saturday, what are you going to tell the people of Etiosa local government?
So I think what I'm going to tell the people of Etiosa local government is to come out and vote for a new voice and a bold vision, to vote for a competent leader that is people-centric, that is committed to delivering on the promises that I've made on the campaign trail over the last 6 weeks. And for people who want a functional local government that delivers basic public services, that sends emergency responses when flooding takes over their homes and their business places, that delivers on quality primary public education for their children, or improve the quality of primary health care in their local government, or want a local government chairman that is accessible, that is accountable to them on a continuous basis, then they should come out and demonstrate that by voting against the incumbent and voting for a new voice and a bold vision. That will be my encouragement, to people listening, to this program now. And, to give a big L to the establishment and to say that it doesn't matter how much you bully us or threaten us, we'll come and show that Etiosa deserves a new kind of leadership that believes in a different kind of politics that is people-centric and not driven by other kinds of political interests.
Thank you very much. Rather than say that you have heard from the horse's mouth, I'll say you have heard from the candidate of the Youth Party's mouth. So you decide when you want to vote on Saturday and do vote for the right candidate at this point. Thank you very much, Ayodele, for being on our show. And of course, to our audiences, thank you for joining us. I believe if we truly want a better Nigeria, we must stop waiting for change to come from the top. The real transformation begins at the grassroots, where governance is supposed to meet the people. But for too long, local governments have been allowed to operate in silence, in shadows, without scrutiny. So I believe that the truth is we cannot afford to keep ignoring the system closest to our everyday reality. So do follow us on our social media handles as we continue to bring topics that matter to everyday Nigerians. I'll see you again on Friday. Do have a great day.